This is Runescape Dragonwilds, a new survival crafting game with a magical twist. From the creators of one of the most popular games of all time, Runescape. This game launched in early access, and it is very early access. When a game about magic doesn't even allow you to level up your magical skills, it begs the question, is this too early access? I'm doing 100 days, or as many as I can, to answer that question. But this is not a review. I'm not going to be giving it a score. I'm not going to be actively looking for flaws. I have one objective, one personal question to answer. Is what's currently in the game fun? That's it. If I have a good time, it's worth it. If I come out wanting more, it's worth it. Early access is just that, early access. And as long as a game puts enough stuff in it from the start and shows good intentions to continue its growth, to me, that's a W. So, will Dragonwilds have the stuff? The gusto? Will it be fun? Our journey today begins at the very start of the game. It starts you off in the character creator before you even get to the main menu. Options are pretty limited though. It is fascinating to see the complexity of some character creators these days. This is not one of them. It's pretty generic stuff here. Limited options, no sliders, very basic. Obviously, there's a lot of room to improve. For me personally, I don't spend a whole lot of time in character creators, so I'm completely fine with it. But I imagine it's going to be very underwhelming to a lot of people. Normally, I'm cool with just picking a generic template because I'm super basic like that. This didn't even have one of those, so I just picked some random stuff. You're then allowed to create your first world where you can play solo, with friends, or with a community. Dedicated servers, coming soon. Seems like a fun game to play with friends. If you have them, I will be playing solo. I started my solo world and I was introduced to some lore with a nice little animation. Disclaimer, I know nothing about RuneScape's lore, so I'll just apologize now if I sound dumb. The story goes as this. A band of explorers, some of Gelinor's finest, set sail on an expedition to find the legendary Ashenfall. But they unexpectedly encountered dragons. And after blades were drawn and spells were cast, the dragons rained ruin. The explorers vanished into the wild and had to learn to survive, forever trying to call for aid, for backup, until they finally found out how. And that is where I come in.
They'll never see it coming.
I teleported to Ashenfall to help defeat the dragon overlords. I took my first steps in this broken down church and I headed toward the wise old man. I tried speaking with him, but I found it a little hard to get that prompt to show up. Guess we'll run to this guy here and see what he's got for us. Speak to the wise old man in the temple. Okay, this is the wise old man in the temple. Let's talk to him. Okay. I saw the indicator. It's not coming back up though. We already having problems? There it is. Okay. He proceeded to tell me why I'm here, to fix their dragon problem. And then he offered me a tutorial. Seeing as how I couldn't even figure out how to talk to him, I knew I should probably do the tutorial. So he sent me off to Doric, just outside the church, where as soon as I stepped out, I saw the dragon ruling these lands. Doric had some helpful advice. He reminded me that hunger and dehydration can be deadlier than a dragon. This is a survival game after all. He instructed me to get some water from these two ponds that he marked on my map so that he could teach me how to survive. But before even doing that, I started with the standard wood gathering and I picked up some ash logs off the ground because they were just sitting there, glowing and shiny, and I just can't resist. The loot goblin inside me is already activated. I need everything. I ran around in the pond for a while, seriously confused about what to do. Well, punching doesn't work. Let's see, maybe B, maybe build. Can I build something? Campfire? Nope, that's not it. Press the command button? Nope, that doesn't work either. Did he tell me and I just wasn't paying attention? That's usually the case. All right, let me just go back to him and see if I got some just from standing in it. Grab some water from there and bring it back here. Then I'll teach you. He doesn't say I need to put it in anything, so let me just go back over there and press more buttons. All right, the game's broken. I guess we can't progress here. They forgot to add a way to collect water in this, so I guess that's our bottle. I guess we can't move any further. Progress has been stopped. Yeah, okay, now it says collect water. So it's the indicator again. It's the same thing as when I first went to that first guy. I wasn't looking down. Wait, but I wasn't looking down. I was generally lost. Already 2 minutes into the game. You'd think this was my first time playing a survival game, or any game for that matter. After feeling like a complete moron, I collected some of that dirty pond water. And I also noticed an extremely memeable action that almost seems intentional. It's so obvious. I could sit here and do this for an hour. Oh boy. Oh boy. I already see the memes, man. I already see them. Oh boy. Oh god. Oh god. What is this? They might want to rethink that one. On my way back to Doric, I had to punch out a few aggressive critters since I don't have any weapons yet, but the resources I got started to unlock new things, like a bed, which I'm sure I will need very soon. All survival games have hunger and thirst. This one also has exhaustion, so a bed I knew would be important. Doric told me about the dirty water being harmful to my health if I drink too much, so he recommended I boil it first. He too knew I was in need of a weapon, so he helped me get situated with that, and he instructed me to craft a stone club. He told me I needed a crafting table first, but I was going to need some stone and ash to do that. Since I already got a good head start on my wood collecting, I was able to put that bench up right away. I needed some more wood and stone though to get the club made, since you can't actually punch trees or stone with your fist, which is what really makes sense. You just have to pick up these early resources off the ground, and they're pretty plentiful, but you do need to actually look down, as I already learned. Once I got my club crafted, I went back to Doric. He sent me off to go chat with Vanica, who was going to help me keep fighting fit. Whatever that means, he can teach you how to keep fighting fit. Okay, these sentences, I cannot read them. Why can I not read them? I think it's part me right now, and I think it's part the game, okay? That sentence doesn't make sense to me. I followed the path up through the temple woods to the marker on my map, where I met up with Vanica. He also told me that hunger will be a bigger obstacle than the dragon itself. I guess time will tell, but I'm starting to see how important food actually is here in Ashenfall. He wanted me to kill some rats and cook their meat to show that I have what it takes. I took my stone club up to the rat-infested windmill, and I started bashing some heads in, getting those delicious meats and other, hopefully, useful resources. One rat dropped 4 different resources, and that's a really good sign for me. It likely means there's lots of different loot to collect and resources to hoard and farm, and hopefully I'll get to do what I love to do most, build a giant collection of resources that I will never, ever possibly use. Because that's how I play survival games. I got my rat meat, but then I had to cook it. So I grabbed some more stones, and I put down my campfire right next to Vanica. I put my meat in there, along with some fuel. And right away, I was very encouraged that it showed me what items that I can actually use in here. As much as I love doing external research to learn a game, I think that every game should have that information in there somewhere, so that you aren't forced to do that if you don't want to. When there's this much complexity in a game, this makes the onboarding a lot easier and less intimidating. So I was a big fan of this, because I'm the type of person who can't even figure out how to pick up water. I showed my meat to Vanica, and, well, I guess he approved. He proceeded to tell me that the rats are resilient to clubs and certain enemies are weaker or more resistant to certain types of damage. He then gave me a knife, the type of damage that the rat is actually weak to, after I already got the rat meat. And this was a common theme throughout this that annoyed the crap out of me. Giving you stuff after you needed it. But I'll get more into that later. My next task was to learn about magic. But since I was on this tutorial for probably 10 times longer than I should have been, I already started to get super hungry and thirsty. So I had to collect some berries because that rat meat wasn't enough. Also, I glossed over Doric's advice to cook my water, so I drank dirty water for probably the first 3 or 4 hours of playing this game. But that's okay, doesn't make your toxicity go up all that much, so it wasn't a big deal. And I didn't know what would happen if that meter got full. I didn't really care to find out, so I just drank a little bit at a time, and I was fine. I met with Zanuck, the friendly goblin, to learn about magic. Before she would be willing to teach me though, she wanted me to get some wood the old-fashioned way, with an axe. While collecting more stones to build that axe, I ran into some unexpectedly hostile creatures. Chickens! Nice. Okay, I need some stone. Oh! Not nice! Bro, what? I didn't even hit you. Why are you trying to fight me, man? You don't want to do this. You're a chicken. How strong can you be? I love early game survival games because everything is valuable. Everything you pick up unlocks something new. Everything is just so exciting. All the new resources. I love it. The stone seemed less plentiful than the wood, so I crafted a pickaxe too before getting all my wood. I suppose I could have just picked up some logs off the ground, but I wanted to see what the tree chopping was all about. Hey, we get an actual tree falling. Oh, and the log rolls. Look at those physics. Okay, I like that. Doesn't just break apart and fall apart. Can I? Oh, and you can break it. Wow, I love that. You can now perform an overhead chop, which deals greater damage against fallen logs used with... Oh, that's so cool, man. That is so cool. And you get a little break in there. I love the animations. Fantastic. I always appreciate when the tree chopping is a little more than just swing, swing, collect. It may seem tedious chopping down a tree and then using an overhead swing to break it apart, but that's the exact kind of immersion that I look for in a survival game, and I absolutely appreciate that it's in here. I brought the wood to Zanuck, and she told me there's a better way to do this. Magic. But magic comes at a cost. I needed something called runes. Specifically, I needed air and astral runes to cast the astral projection. I see what you did there. There are some rune essences located all over this world, and I just had to take my pickaxe and mine it. I got my runes, and I built a rune altar, which is where I can craft what I needed. I made some of each, which they are very cheap to craft, and then I took them back to Zanuck. She gave me a book to boost my XP for woodcutting because I still needed to get to level 11 woodcutting before unlocking the tree chopping magic spell. I found it quite interesting how the leveling works for each skill. I enjoy the task of trying to level up each area, as long as you get a worthwhile reward for it. In most of these, it seems there's some really valuable things that you can unlock, so I love being able to grind towards that. It's also not that grindy. You level up pretty quickly, so you can unlock those things without spending too much time. But the glaring issue here is that 2 of the skills are currently unavailable in early access. I'll probably talk a little bit more about this in my recap at the end, but I did find it a little odd and confusing at first as to why it was even in here. However, as I went, there's so much other leveling and other things unlocked and other ways to progress and upgrade that I honestly kind of forgot about it. So, not that big of a deal, but again, I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. My tutorial was complete. Only about 30 minutes longer than it really should have been, but hey, at least I'm here now. Zanuck instructed me to meet up with the wise old man again in Bramblemead Valley. When I entered, I was told it's a power level 2 area. So it continued on with the already a little bit annoying practice of making me do things before I'm ready for it. I went into the village and I found my first few goblins with my stone dagger. I had to take a minute to run around grabbing all those new resources, like I do. Then I made my way up into the ruined building. The wise old man let me know my next objective. Naturally, I needed a base first, but first, I found this scroll in a chest that unlocked this silly bag of noggin, and I was super delighted. What? It's a mask. I was thinking it'd be like a feeding pouch or something. Noggin was never the best looker in Ashenfall, or so others claimed. He lived his life ashamed of his appearance, and worse, a sad-looking sack across his face, so that none would fall ill at the sight of his hideous features. Oh my. I knew I'd need a place to sleep, so I tried putting my bed down. Of course, though, it needs a roof. I set up the most basic thing that I possibly could so that I could simply lay down. I love building in survival games, but early on, it's just not that practical because it takes way too long for me, and I haven't even learned the game yet. Also, I will likely want to move, so there was no point in setting up anything too permanent. I just got what I needed so that I could craft a bed and claim it for a respawn point for when I die, and also a way to keep my energy levels up. The wise old man had some words too about my shack. He then told me someone named Kathan from their party was missing. He told me that I needed to track down a deer antler so that he could cast a tracking spell. I knew I was going to need some wood for construction, so it was time to unlock that astral projection. Leveling woodworking is easy, just chop some wood. It took a couple of trees, that's it. Then I had my first spell. All right, and then we do a little bit of this. Nice! That is so sick! Yes! Using magic to chop down trees is something I never thought I needed in a survival game. How cool is that? Yes, I love it. I cast this bad boy, and it made me never want to chop down a tree in any other game ever again. This was way too cool. So thank you, game, for ruining all my other tree chopping experiences permanently. The only downside is the 45-second cooldown. Now, if there was only a way to break these logs apart with magic too. I had to look at some of the other spells to see what I had to look forward to, and it definitely got me excited. There seemed to be some really useful and fun things to use, so I was looking forward to unlocking this stuff. I think that's what excited me the most, that it wasn't all just combat spells. It's rare to see magic in games being used to chop down a tree, or to help you cook, or for construction. I found that unique, refreshing, and a really sensible way to add magic to a survival game. I spent the rest of my first beginning steps gathering up a bunch more random and new resources. This was the first point I left the game and came back. It may have been all the resources, it may have been my need to learn everything all at once. Whatever it was, I already started to feel a pull and an itch to come back to this world, even though I barely made it through the tutorial. This is always a good sign in a game. I started my second session just 4 hours later, excited to learn more. Immediately, I was greeted with a fun experience while I stared down a cow, wondering if it was hostile or not. We doing this? We're doing this? We're doing this? I guess not. For now, it seemed not, but I was getting hungry. I built a campfire and I cooked some chickens. Then I got my first taste of some higher level combat. And by higher level, I mean just some level 2 rats. This was my first real combat experience in the game, and I quite enjoyed it. What I liked about it is that it felt challenging but doable. I was busy learning the dodge timing and blocking while also trying to pay attention to new skills popping up on my screen. I had basic armor and weapons, and the rats got the best of me, as they should have. But it wasn't overly challenging either. I could have beaten them if I knew what I was doing, even without leveling up. I was also at a disadvantage with hunger and food, but I didn't learn that just yet. So far, things seemed fairly balanced, and I like that. Anyway, since your stuff just respawns where you die, and you respawn at your claimed bed, I got my gear right away and I moved on, looking for those deer antlers. But a knife clearly wasn't going to get the job done. The deer were very fast. So I did the survival thing. I started getting food and just surviving. While peacefully cooking my delicious meal, some goblins decided to crash my party. I was being hunted. I just came off of playing 100 hours of Palworld. Raids are obnoxious, so I knew exactly what I was in for. With my stamina limited, I ran for my life because I knew there was no way I could defeat these goblins. I still had the starting armor and weapon. I didn't even know what I was doing in the game yet. I didn't even realize I had limited stamina, and their hits were pretty hard. When I respawned at my bed, the raid surprisingly continued on. Since it was right there near my bed, I just kept practicing my combat though, all while being completely limited with hunger, thirst, and energy. And I started to actually realize the importance of the survival aspect of this game. What I enjoyed about all of this though was that it was continuing to challenge me in a way that made me want to continue playing. I wanted to get stronger, better weapons, armor, learn the different combat moves and spells that kept popping up on my screen as I was leveling up. It was a tasty appetizer that made me want to taste what else the chef had cooking up. So after it was all over, I rested up and I got my food and water back up. Then I focused right away on getting those better weapons and armor. But I didn't have much. I crafted a shield and the cape for a nice extra bit of protection. Not too often that you see a cape in a game. And then I realized I could actually craft that bag of noggin. And it gave me protection, so of course I had to wear that thing. I knew right away that this was gonna be my thumbnail. The goblins dropped bags of loot. It's good loot too, so kind of worth your time fighting them, which I also appreciate, at least early on. The only issue is they are a bit tedious to open. I only had a few here, but in the future, this gets a little annoying. I had unlocked the Invulnerable Shield, Tempest Shield spell, and I wanted to test that out. So I got those runes from the bags, and I gave my first combat spell a test. I didn't quite understand it at the time, but it's a really powerful spell that I ended up using a lot in the future, but not as much in the near future. At that point, I had forgotten all about what I'm supposed to be doing. So back to the old wise man, and he reminded me that I needed those antlers. But he so graciously also let me know that it'd probably be better to do it with a bow. A generous tip that is always appreciated. It's a nice little nudge in the right direction from a character without some immersion breaking, hey, over here, do this thing now. Yes, hunting a deer with a bow is pretty obvious, but in open world games, it's easy to get distracted by so many things. This was a nice way to right my course so that I could get back to the main quest. I needed a spinning wheel first, so the official grind began, because you need it to be inside. Again, I'm not a fan of building things indoors. This is one quality thing in games that I just don't really understand. This spinning wheel can operate perfectly fine outside. What I did like, however, is that things like the campfire or the kiln later on actually have to be placed outdoors. That was neat, but please, just let me spin some wool outdoors. Anyway, I had to get to work crafting my makeshift building with a makeshift roof. I do intend on building a nice base. I really want to explore the depth of the building mechanics in the game and how far you can take it, because it is definitely one of my favorite aspects of most survival games. But as I mentioned, it's still a little too early. I don't even have things to decorate it with. So I did what I needed to get myself some cover. Then I crafted my first bit of horse thread with all that animal fur I had been collecting. And while gathering more wood, it seems I had encountered a less friendly cow. This beast was a level 2, so it was not easy to take down. I had to work for my supper for sure. Certainly made me want to reconsider what kind of food that I was going to be eating early on. I crafted the ash short bow and some arrows and went hunting. I was attacked by some rats, and I had my first real opportunity to see how powerful the bow is. It's as I should have expected. Bows are like always super powerful. The level 2 rats were now no longer a threat, but they were actually food. And burgers were back on the menu. In fact, everything went down with ease. In that moment, I'm pretty sure I just became an archer. I took my antlers to the wise old man, and he sent me off to the goblin castle to find our man. But a castle full of goblins? I was not prepared for that. I had some other things I wanted to do first. The resources are piling up. I love a game with a lot of resources and items when they are all relevant and can be used for different things. So far, that seems to be the case. But when that is the case, there needs to be a good way to organize. Sadly, this is pretty brutal. It's small chest space and no remote crafting. This is just the beginning, but I'll tell you now, it's already my biggest complaint. Please, at the very least, have remote crafting. But still, there's a lot of need for improvement elsewhere, which I'll touch a little bit on later. For now, though, I did what I'm used to, because honestly, it's not just this game. Most games still cannot figure out a proper storage system. Please, please, fix this. I got a new rune ability I tested out. Seems to be quite handy, the wind step. And then I crafted the ash battle staff. I'm all about magic, and I was hoping to go that route with my character and playstyle, so I tested that out right away. It uses the runes as ammo, and so far, I believe there are only 2 which you get right from the start, fire and air. And while looking into those and trying to understand a bit more, I was reminded why I'm here. Oh yeah, there's a dragon. And he likes to make frequent visits to lay poison and hellfire on my base. But it's not just my base, it's wherever I am. Sometimes, while out exploring, he'll just come and say hi. Fortunately for me, I started after a patch that they turned down his frequency, along with the raids, so it honestly felt pretty reasonable for me. After getting comfortable with some ranged weapons, my bow and now my magical staff, I decided I'd check out this goblin castle. It's close enough to my base. If I go there underpowered, it shouldn't be too much of a hassle to go back and get my stuff. So I wandered up that way, cautiously approaching those level 2 goblins who were still quite a bit stronger than me, keeping my distance and trying to use my bow as much as I could. I was very much still learning about the combat. The weapons have unique abilities or combos too. The short bow, for example, has this quick fire combo that I found to be very handy. Even things like the staff have different abilities, all things that I would learn later on. But this to me is part of what makes combat so great. It's very dynamic and fun. And the complexity of it is another thing that when I stopped playing, had me thinking about it and making me want to come back for more to learn these different moves and weapons and see what they can do. I continued up toward the castle, but I was being hunted while trying to enter. This was my first time realizing that the raids and dragon attacks don't just happen at your base, they can happen anywhere. I got up to the goblin castle and I attempted to clear it so I could search for Cthon. But my magic staff wasn't quite cutting it. It felt pretty weak against these level 2 goblins, which was a little disheartening since I was planning on making a magical character. My initial fear was that the magic would be useless. So far, it has been quite useful elsewhere, so hopefully this is not the case going forward with combat. I quickly and easily was able to grab my stuff though. And on the way back, I learned about fall damage and how you can take very little of it. Oh, and another reminder that this is a survival game, and if you are hungry, thirsty, and or exhausted, your life is going to be a lot harder. A couple of rats took me out because I literally couldn't get away thanks to my lack of commitment of taking care of my well-being. Something I'd have to pay a lot closer attention to in the future. After the adventure of just getting my stuff back, I took a moment to explore some of the things that the game had to offer. Scrolling through some recipes and things that I had unlocked, mostly I was looking to upgrade my armor. So I crafted some coarse thread with the flax I had been picking up off the ground, and I crafted the apprentice robe, my first level 2 piece of armor. This had an incredible benefit besides adding much more defense. The armor pieces have a set bonus. If you wear 1, 2, or 3 pieces, you get different benefits. This was the only chest piece available to me at the time, but it caught my eye because it had a negative 50% stamina regen delay. In a game where dodging and blocking is the key to not dying in combat, this seemed insanely strong early on, so I knew I had to craft it. The armor came with an additional hidden benefit. It gave me access to an additional health bar, and I unlocked something called the Ward Stone, a magical stone that could give me a temporary shield. I crafted some and then used it to fill up my bar, but it came with a bit of a cost. The same toxicity meter that the dirty water and poison raised also went up. Without any sort of guidance, I wasn't sure how bad that would be if it got maxed out still, so I just figured, don't overuse it. And I really kind of needed that because the enemies were still just a little too strong for me, so having that little bit of extra protection would make my life a lot easier. I decided on upgrading to the apprentice hat as well. It was time to say goodbye to my Mr. Bag hat. I needed the added protection and that additional benefit I got from wearing 2 sets of this armor. Now that I had some better armor, I headed back up to the castle. This time, I just relied on my bow still. Even though I had all these magical improvements, it was just the easiest and strongest weapon I had by far. Overall, the castle was a lot smaller and a lot easier than I thought it would be. I was expecting to go inside and having to clear out this big internal building, but nope, there's just a few enemies guarding the outside and it's a pretty quick and easy castle to storm. At the top, I found Cthon's journal. He seemed pretty dead set on taking down Velgar, the dragon overlord. I learned where I could find him next, and as soon as I got done reading, Velgar himself decided to introduce himself. He didn't have a health bar, so I knew that must meant it was time to run. I did finally get a chance to use my Tempest shield for real, and wow, this thing is powerful. Blocks all damage while it's up, and it gives a knockdown effect when it expires. It is extremely helpful in group fights. I noticed I had a secondary quest warding off danger. So I went to speak with the old wise man. He basically just told me about the ward stones that I already crafted, something that I obviously figured out on my own, but that was nice. He confirmed the idea of them only being temporarily harmful. He says each time it'll take a piece of my soul, so that didn't sound great, but as long as there's no permanent damage, I'll continue to use them because even after my armor upgrades, those level 2 goblins are still giving me a bit of trouble. I set up my tannery next, which sadly also requires a roof. Then I had to expand my makeshift base so that I had more roof space, still holding off on the building for now. It was my first chance to use the Eye of Oculus, one of the spells that you can cast that gives a build mode. Normally, this is just a feature in games. Well, some games, because a lot of games still suck at building. So, even though it could have just been a feature, I kind of like the idea of using magic for it. It's early enough on that you don't really need to work hard to unlock it, and it just kind of adds more purpose and more use to the magic, just beyond the combat, as I mentioned before. At the tannery, I turned some animal hide into leather. I got a stronger pickaxe crafted. Then I was being hunted again. Okay, at this point I was starting to get a little bit tired of it, but that's mostly because I was still so weak to take on these enemies. All I wanted to do was farm stuff and organize my base, but I couldn't be left in peace. I'm totally cool with bumping up the frequency and challenge once I actually get established, but I still have a lot to learn. Still trying to figure stuff out. For now, I just dealt with them the best that I could. I upgraded my cooking and built the cooking pot. This is also where I first realized that I could actually cook my water, thanks to the handy guide that tells you what you can actually put in there. The cooking pot was nice because it gave 2 slots, which meant I could cook more complex recipes. And just by accident, I made myself some fleet-footed infusion. Turned out to be a really effective and useful drink. It gave me stamina reduction while running, and I had been doing a lot of that so far, so a recipe that I'd be sure to remember. Deer antler and water. It was definitely something I appreciated. It's one thing to just have things in a game for the sake of variety, but when there are different benefits that actually help you, it's so important to me to have that kind of depth. And I was excited that my first crafted food item was very significant. Now that I had some resources piling up, I was beginning to feel that storage burden. It continues to become more and more prevalent as I get more stuff, and there doesn't ever seem to be a good solution. The next chest up is too costly for me this early on, but I am in desperate need of space. Having the fill stacks button helps a little for sorting, but when it comes to pulling items for what you are crafting, it's an absolute nightmare. I really hope there's a better solution for this in the future. I continued on the main quest, searching for Cthon. I headed toward the swamp where the golden circle was guiding me to look for a blue flame door. I found some clay. Naturally, I picked that up because you never know when you're going to need it, and it unlocked a whole bunch of new stuff too. Then, just a little bit further up, I saw that blue flame door. At least I assumed that's what it was. There was a blue flame, and it was a door. But when I went inside, there wasn't any sort of indication telling me that I was in the right place. So I just went in and explored the dungeon, navigating these booby traps and trying my best to fight off these vault guardians. But they, too, like everything else so far, is just a little too tough for me right now. I'm still very much struggling to fight pretty much anything, unless it's a level 1 rat. If it's just 1 versus 1, I can survive. But when there's more than one, whether it's a goblin or rats or these guardians, I'm still very underpowered. And this brings me to probably my main criticism of the game. I briefly mentioned it before, and it only now becomes noticeable, but it definitely gets worse. The game constantly forces you into really tough scenarios to get the resource or the thing that you need to progress. And not just for progressing the story, but if you want better armor, better weapons, you basically have to force yourself into difficult combat or areas to get that. And then by the time you get that upgrade, whatever you needed it for, you already did it, so the upgrade kind of becomes useless in a sense. Anyway, that's just a taste of it right here. I'll touch more on that later. Thankfully, though, your stuff is left out of the dungeon, so I just had to run back to the door to grab my gear. and since it was pretty difficult, I knew there'd be a good chance that I'd die again. I ended up putting myself a temporary base in the swamp. There's better ways to do this later on, but for now I was stuck with getting wood and just straight up building a whole new spot with a roof and a bed to respawn at. Then I went back in for another attempt. Even though I wasn't 100% sure this is what I needed to be doing because there was still no specific guidance, but this was kind of the only blue flame door in the swamp, so it had to be it. This time I tested out some other weapons, my fire ability, but all the same, I was just too underpowered. So, a third attempt. This time I just relied on my trusty bow, and I officially solidified my role as an archer. Using distance and the booby traps to my advantage, I made it through and I found Spitfoot, the one mentioned in Cathan's journal. But Cathan was nowhere to be found. Spitfoot said Cathan had left him behind and was pretty upset about it, so he wasn't really going to be giving me any more information. Doesn't really like humans anymore after that. I grabbed myself a Vault Core, seemed like something I probably needed. Then I took down the Rat King and left the dungeon, making my way back to my home base. I spoke to the wise old man who let me know where Cathan was likely headed. He knew he was going after Velgar, the dragon, so I had to track him down, but he warned me about the Garu, a much stronger enemy in the upcoming area, and he told me to properly prepare myself before going there. But that's just the thing. I can't upgrade my armor anymore without going into those areas really and getting those resources. I really just wanted a way to upgrade a little bit more before having to face off against even more challenging enemies. The level 2s were a challenge enough already with my mostly level 1 equipment. Then, while looking through the next thing for me to build to continue progressing, I spotted the Lodestone, the absolute game-changing structure that would allow me to teleport. I knew I'd have to be crafting this thing immediately, but I needed Vault Cores, and I only had one so far. I then was opened up to even more nuances with the combat. Initially, that flame rune felt very weak, but when I realized the real way to use it, it had me intrigued and made me want to find out more. It has a unique combo with its main attack where it will do this explosion from the ground and then drop meteors. I was just using this for its basic attack and secondary flamethrower, which is still pretty cool, but noticing this had me wanting to try it out more and more. And it was another thing that I was delighted to discover because it's just more depth to combat and your ability to fight in different ways. I was really focused on trying to unlock the weapon and armor upgrades and explore what things I could craft. First, I needed more space because I figured I'd have to build things under my roof, so I needed wood, but I was close to unlocking that splinter ability. I got to work going after that to make chopping wood a lot easier. The astral projection is just the first half of the process, so without that second component, chopping wood can still be a bit grindy. But being able to use magic to break up the wood is also game-changing. And once again, reminded me that I'll never be satisfied in another tree chopping game again unless I can use magic. Next up, I built my kiln, and I put some wood in there to get my first bits of charcoal, which I will use eventually for some kind of fuel. One of the spells you can cast helps speed up this process too. Again, it's just another nice touch I mentioned before. Having spells and magic that can be part of the game more than just combat. It's something I truly appreciate. I put some of the swamp tar that I got from my swamp expedition into the kiln because it told me that I could, and I got adhesive even though I had no idea what I would need that for. But mostly I was trying to figure out how to get bronze, and the kiln was not the answer. I ran into a ghostly figure that I assumed was a side quest, even though I didn't have time to think much about it because another raid hit me. At this point though, I finally felt capable of actually being able to deal with them. Next up, I needed that lodestone, so I needed more vault cores. I went to the vault near my base because I hadn't gotten to that one yet, only the one in the swamp. I was kind of expecting something different, but it was just more of the same. Limited enemy types and a similar challenge to the other one. Something I definitely hope is added in the future. I personally feel that good AI and proper level scaling is better than having a variety, but the current enemy pool is very limited at the start and definitely needs some work. Once I had 2 cores, I put down my first lodestone. Then it was time to find a place to put down my second. it only made sense for me to start pushing out to the unexplored areas. So if I die out there, I'll have an easy way to get my stuff back. I got all ready with my health potions and ward stones and food and everything I needed and set off on an adventure. You have to go through the Whispering Swamp to get to the next area, but traversal is not friendly in this game. As I found out earlier, the fall damage is rough and a lot of areas are elevated that you just can't get past or reach. The jump spell helps to reach some areas, but a lot of the map is specifically designed to not allow you to travel that way. It's a small complaint of mine. I like when you are truly free, either by flight or by climbing or by grappling. It just feels more like an actual open world, but this does not have a lot of that. The cliffside forces you into one specific area to pass through the swamp, so I was forced to travel most of the swamp, and the goblins can move through the water faster than you. So, of course, I died before I could even put my lodestone down. When I ran all the way back to get my stuff and hopefully continue my adventure, I was hit with a nasty surprise. This freakish monster, the Abyssal Demon. It had a boss health bar and was a level 4. I haven't even seen level 3 things yet. There was no escaping this thing. No amount of wind step was going to save me here. But this became a problem. I didn't want to have to craft all my stuff over again. That thing is way faster than me though, and I didn't want to spend an hour dying to it over and over. I gave it one attempt at getting my stuff back before I was just going to give up. I tried using wind step to stay out of the water because it slows you down so much. Then I used the classic run in circles method to try to outsmart him. I got my stuff back fortunately, and I was very lucky to be right near this little goblin cave. I went inside, took out the much easier goblins, and then sat there and watched the Abyssal Demon helplessly stare at me while I had a nice little meal. And once I was fed and he didn't run off, I thought, why not just place my lodestone in here? And then I had a deeper thought. I have some arrows, and he's not going anywhere. Why not just shoot him? I had myself an easy kill that I was way underpowered for, and I did not deserve at all. Remember that thing I was just saying about enemy AI? Well, this one needs some work, but I was more bothered by it even being here. This ties into my main complaint about progression, because I have to go through the swamp to get to the next area. I'm curious how I'd ever even fight this thing without cheesing it, without better weapons, which I can't get yet. There is stealth in this game, but it's not really introduced, and I don't know how effective it would even be against this boss creature. Besides trying to get lucky and run past this thing, how is someone supposed to progress if it's here? Because it's actually pretty close to the entrance to the next area. It's just one of those things I feel I should have more options to overcome this, either by providing ways to level up in the earlier areas or more traversal. I'm totally okay if the game gives you tools to sneak past it, but those tools don't necessarily seem to exist. At least they're not obvious. Anyway, that's my main complaint. So I will come back to it a few more times when it comes up, but don't let me make it sound like that was ruining my experience, because it was not. I actually got really excited that I encountered it early on, and I got some unique resources from it, unlocking a special weapon. That kind of stuff is so cool. Just maybe don't force me into that. Now that it was down though, I could move a lot more freely. I put my second lodestone right near the exit, or I guess the entrance to the next area. I went back to base quick for a nice nap because I was starting to get exhausted, and I already know how damaging that can be. Then back out once I re-equip myself. The lodestone travel is spectacular. You can tear it down easily, get the parts back, and move on. It's absolutely essential to have with you at all times, and I'm very happy this exists in the game. It does have a cost to use, law runes, but they are very cheap to craft and you can carry a ton of them at once. So, a very awesome system indeed. I was still in search of what I needed for bronze. I found some copper and I put down my lodestone nearby for quick access. I hadn't been using my spell for mining much because up till now I was mostly just mining stone. But oh man, I thought the tree chopping was satisfying. I never want to have to swing a pickaxe again. Something about this is so incredibly satisfying. It's just too bad I have to wait 45 seconds in between using it. So thanks a lot, game. Now mining and tree chopping is ruined in every other game for me. The copper unlocked the furnace, so I figured that's how I'd be crafting my metals. I went back to base and I got it set up, but copper is not all that I needed. I also needed question marks, and I definitely didn't look it up or where to find it, but I needed tin. So normally I do like finding things on my own and discovering them without guides. But in this case, it goes back to my main complaint. I need this stuff to get bronze, but these level 3 enemies are way too tough for me. It would be really nice if I had an opportunity to level up or get stronger before having to go in this area. So anyways, instead of running around dying over and over, I decided to just look this up so I knew exactly where to go and could get it done quick. I found what I needed, the tin ore nodes, and blasted it up with some magic. I collected what I could and I ran from the terror birds because I just couldn't fight anything over here yet. I put my copper and tin together to get some bronze bars. I really needed more lodestones too, so back to the vault. I didn't complete it last time, so this time I made my way all the way through. The enemy still felt tough, but I was finally fully getting used to the combat. I came away with 2 cores now, so I could make 2 more lodestones, but first I had more stuff to craft at base. I got my smithing anvil set up so that I could finally get into the bronze tier. I spent some time trying to deal with storage issues, doing the best I could to organize things, still stuck with crafting the lowest tier storage because I just don't know if it's even worth crafting the larger ones. I was also focused on getting every structure put up. All of them had important uses and they seemed to need them all to continue my progress. I put a pottery wheel up and a cauldron for potions. I made some clay vessels and then I had to cook them in the kiln. Then I had to add them to the cauldron along with other ingredients to make potions. It's a lot of steps. Now, for some people that might turn you off, but this to me is what a great survival crafting game is all about. Emphasis on the crafting. 2 different genres, often one and the same though. And that is that the complex but detailed process of doing all these steps is actually really satisfying. The only thing I wish for, a few ways to make the process not to be slowed down by storage inefficiencies. Anyway, I crafted myself some healing potions. Then I tested out yet another spell that completely ups the standard for games with durability problems. There's nothing worse than when you are out on an adventure and your weapon or your armor breaks, but thanks to my magical abilities, I can just throw it down and repair it on the spot. But the best part is, I don't have to waste resources on repairing things over and over and over. Just ruins, which are basically free. I needed a lot more bronze, both for weapons and armor. So I spent quite a while continuing my search for more nodes that were actually accessible, fighting through these much tougher enemies very slowly and trying to use my lodestone to run back to safety. It took a while, but I got more and more in little bits and pieces, and I eventually crafted my sawmill, which turns 1 wood into 2 planks that are used in various structures. And I upgraded to the bronze axe so that I can now chop oak trees, which I needed for more upgrades to armor and weapons and other structures. I was needing more and more tin, so I had to continue pushing further and further into that area. And I wanted to craft better armor or a weapon to make getting that tin and copper easier, but it just still required too many resources, so I had to keep doing it underpowered. I used what I had to craft the bronze helmet and sword eventually, but I had my eyes on the next bow, the oak short bow, because I was still relying heavily on my bow. Then I put up my tanner's kit, which is an improvement to my tannery, allowing me 2 slots and the ability to combine things that make more complex resources. This is where I used that adhesive that I made earlier. I combined it with leather and I got hard leather. I kind of forgot all about my shield, but since I had a sword now, I upgraded my shield as well. And I headed back to the fractured plains to see if my upgrades actually made a difference. And they definitely did. Having that bronze sword, which I believe is a level 3, made all the difference. Now I could actually fight more than 1 enemy at a time, and I could actually explore this area a little more. The helmet helped quite a bit too, and so did the shield, that is when I actually used it. But now that I could actually fight stuff in the area, it made me feel a lot more comfortable to explore. I moved my lodestone to a safe, convenient location near some copper and tin nodes. These upgrades were super necessary though, because the wolves that I needed to slaughter dropped fine animal fur, which I needed for wool, so I had to slay a bunch of them, something that would just not be possible with my previous armor and weapons. I explored a bit, killed some wolves, and I brought home as much copper and tin as I could carry. This was a big turning point for me in how I felt about the combat. Up till now, I liked it, but I didn't quite love it. Mostly because I was only using the bow, which seemed a little too powerful maybe, and the staff, which maybe seemed a little underpowered, but getting up close with a sword that actually does reasonable damage really made me start to love how the combat works, and I was itching for some more challenging fights. So I continued exploring, looking for just that. But I got a little too confident when I tried to take on some Garou berserkers, a druid, and some giant dude with a shield. My new weapon might be solid, but my armor was still lacking. I had picked up a new resource, anima bark, while getting my stuff back, then back home to make more upgrades. I really wanted to improve on the magic, so I got the oak staff, and I went back to the goblin camp that I died at. I still had to rely on my bow because these guys are tough, but I emptied out the cave and I grabbed the nodes. Unfortunately, nothing else exciting in here. I was kind of hoping for some special loot or something, but it was empty. I pushed all the way up to Velgar's tower and even took down one of those Garou thanes with my new staff. I found Cathan, the one the wise old man had instructed me to hunt down. He was dead, but his ghost had some words for me. Apparently, he never even got to fight Velgar. The Garou mobbed him and killed him before he got the chance. He did give me a recipe though for a dragonkin horn, which if I use it at the tower, will force the dragon to challenge me. The next quest was to head into the last two zones that I had yet to uncover. Surely though, they'd be higher level, so I wanted to take some time to up my armor and weapons, considering I still don't even have all level 3 stuff. First, I had structures to craft. I put my loom up so I could start making cloth for better armors, then a cooking range, hoping it would unlock even more food options. I started sinking pretty deep into the gameplay loop of farming resources, crafting things, organizing things, farming more resources, and crafting more new stuff. I was trying to uncover and unlock as much as I could to give myself the best chance going into the next areas. And also, I was trying to see everything the game had to offer. Eventually, though, it was time to continue my journey. So I geared up, including resources to craft a lodestone, and started my adventure to the storm-touched highlands, the first level 4 area. It took me about 20 seconds before I was freaked out by an epic lightning bolt that struck me while fighting a druid. That was terrifying, and it sent me running back home, dying to poison before I could even make it. I was not expecting the environment to attack me. That area was hard enough, and that is the last thing that I needed. But since I was starting to get desperate for the next important resource, iron, I knew I needed to make my way back up there. I probably could have further upgraded my armor to bronze, but this was another instance of wanting or needing iron tier before entering the area. But it is the level 4 area, and I can't get level 4 armor or weapons without first entering this area. So, again, with the idea of forcing me into things that I don't necessarily want to be doing right now. I was able to find a node early in that zone and put my lodestone right nearby, so now I actually had easy access to iron, and relatively safe, other than the lightning, of course. I had picked up a recipe for the hunter's stag bow from a Garou hunter. It seemed amazing, but I didn't know where 3 out of the 5 resources were even at, so unfortunately I could not craft that. Same goes for that abyssal whip, which I got the spine for a long time ago. I still couldn't craft it because I didn't know where to get ram's horns. But while exploring for more iron ore, I did learn where I could find them. Naturally, of course, they spawn in the most difficult zone, so even if I wanted to craft that whip when I had gotten it back then, there's no way I would have been able to because I would not have been able to make it into this zone safely. My main priority though was better armor. I was still wearing the basic pants, so I was in desperate need for upgrades. I tossed some anima bark in the kiln to make wild anima, thread my strings to cloth in the loom, then crafted the wizard robe legs. Since I was already in the iron tier, I was looking to keep things going. I wanted the iron plate body, but still needed some more resources for it. But now that I had my lodestone in the storm-touched highlands, I was in a fairly safe spot. I could regularly come here and get iron and ram's horns, the two main things I needed for now from this zone. And since I felt more and more comfortable in there, I continued exploring further up. I made my way up to the castle, but I died in the most frustrating way. That is, forgetting to put down a lodestone first. I got even more new resources here too in this cave. I found some granite. Then I made my way back home with as many resources as I could carry. But I was definitely tired of dying, so the armor upgrade became my next priority. I didn't know how to make padded cloth because I still needed an upgrade to my loom, but now that I had plenty of iron and ram horn, I could craft the loom harness, which adds a second slot, allowing me to combine rough cloth and wool cloth to get that padded cloth. And I got myself the iron chestplate. Finally, some really decent armor. This was a significant upgrade to what I had. I was keen on keeping the wizard pants for now because that negative 50% stamina reduction delay I felt was way too beneficial to get rid of. And I was sort of out of resources anyways, so I stuck with my current set for now as I continued my quest. At this point, storage was way out of control. Before, it was manageable, but now it's just tedious. I'm really hoping there's a better solution for this. I learned about the spell that gives you personal storage, but it's the last thing you unlock, so I wasn't about to grind that out right now. I still don't know how useful it actually is either, but I can guarantee remote crafting is still going to be needed. I got back into the loop of farming, grinding, crafting, rinse and repeat, hoarding more resources than I probably needed, but just enjoying my time in this survival crafting game. I got a grindstone and ground up some rocks, but not a whole lot was unlocked from that. I learned later I used that in potions, it seemed mostly. I also had a large ward stone unlocked. I never crafted the medium one because I didn't really have the resources, but now that I know how to get anima, I went for the larger ones. And since my new armor provided a larger shield, I had more room to use it. Once I felt good about everything going on at my base, I was ready to make my next move to the last zone I had to uncover. I put my lodestone right outside the gates, and I took care of the guards near the entrance. For the first time, using my flame sword, which I actually unlocked a long time ago. And after using it, I think I just switched from being a bowman to a swordsman, because this sword and shield combo definitely rose the ranks for me in terms of preferred combat style. When you add in the flame sword and the tempest shield, which I don't use here, but it feels pretty unstoppable, and I like that. As soon as I entered the new area, immediately I was hit with a poisonous fog, draining my health extremely fast. So I turned around and ran. Clearly I was going to be needing some kind of anti-poison. I didn't have any guidance from the wise old man, so I only assumed it was a craftable item. And sure enough, the journals and recipes in your menu are actually helpful. The first one on the list in the recipe section is the anti-poison potion. And I already knew how to craft potions at the cauldron, so since it gave me the materials I needed, I knew what I needed to do. But I wanted more vault cores too, so that I could make more lodestones. So I actually took care of that first. It is nice to be able to quickly run the vault and just grab a respawning core without the respawning enemies here. I fought them once and I really didn't need to fight them again, so I was happy about that. I headed out to the swamp to get more mushrooms and Harlander for those potions. On the way back, I took down this goblin fortress that I avoided last time that I came this way, and I found myself another side quest. I attempted to do it quickly to see what it was about, but it wasn't as straightforward as go here and look at this, which is a good thing. It required some exploring, so I actually just held off for now. I got to the swamp, put my lodestone down, one just to make it easier to get home, but I assumed that I would be needing a lot more of these resources for potions. Plus, the swamp tar is here, and I needed that for more hard leather, so I kept the lodestone here so I could quickly come back when I needed those resources. By the time I'm done, I'm sure this whole map is going to be covered in lodestones. Speaking of lodestones, I went back into the swamp vault to get more cores, so that I could craft even more lodestones. Once I had my potions, I could safely travel through the Bloodlight Swamp. I got new resources: silver, dwellberries, snapdragon, swampweed, lightwood. There was a bunch of new stuff in this area, and I grabbed as much of it as I could. I continued working on some upgrades. Now that I had some of those new resources like silver, I could craft the level 4 set of armor, the Dark Mage. I really wanted to keep that negative 50% stamina regen delay, so I was glad to see that on this set of armor too. I went with the pants and the hood and stuck with my iron chestplate for now. Then, my weapons upgrade. I crafted the iron sword, and after a little more mining, the iron shield because I was still using the leather one. I was set and ready to go on an adventure through the poisonous swamp. I set off to find my next piece of the quest: parts to craft the dragon challenge horn. Right in the beginning of the swamp area, I spotted the abyssal demon once again. This time though, I welcomed the fight. I cast my spells to get a flame sword and the invulnerable tempest shield. But I really didn't even need that. My new iron sword and the flame enchantment shredded through this thing with no problem. And I was now exactly where I wanted to be, able to take down a level 4 creature with ease. I got more new resources, gold, then continued up the path searching. It led me to the top of the hill into a goblin stronghold. With my new weapons and armor, fighting these Garou are getting a lot easier. The sword and shield definitely took over as my preferred weapons compared to the bow, especially since you have this Tempest shield. It is so incredibly valuable against stronger enemies. After clearing the camp, I found some new resources at this big red tree, but I couldn't harvest it because I needed an upgrade to my axe. So I put down a lodestone, went back to craft that iron axe quickly, then right back out to farm some bloodwood sap. I was running out of anti-poison potions, so another trip to the other swamp to get Horrorlander, which seemed to be a little sparse. Then I went back to the Stormlands to see if I could find that last component that I needed for the Dragon Challenge Horn. I ran into Vanica again, who sent me on an additional side quest, but I was still focused on the main one. Despite all these upgrades, these level 4 Thane actually still put up quite a fight, so I'll definitely be seeking to upgrade further. My goal is to make everything in the world feel easy before I go into that dragon fight, but after running around for a while, I came up empty-handed. So I went back to grinding weapon upgrades. I was looking to get that Hunter stag bow crafted now that I knew how to get all the resources that it was asking for, so I did that. I needed more vault parts, so I went into the vault that I hadn't been to yet, but it was still more the same. I'm definitely hoping that there's a variety in enemy types in the future. Now that I had more and more cores though, I could actually start placing lodestones near my vault doors to make getting vault parts extremely quick and easy. I needed 18 deer antler for the bow, and that probably took the most time, hunting all those deer down. But really, it wasn't too much of a grind. Maybe took 30 minutes total to get all the resources. Very doable for what some people seem to say is the strongest weapon in the game. Eventually, I got it crafted, and some iron arrows too, since I still mostly had been using bronze ones. Then I tested it out, and it was a lot stronger. This thing was a beast. I don't know if it actually is the strongest weapon in the game, but it certainly feels like it at this point. With the range and the headshot capability, it's kind of hard to want to use anything else. I was still having a lot of fun with the sword and shield though, so I will likely stick to that. But there's no doubt I'll always have my stag bow with me. I continued searching this area for the final resource I needed. I stormed the Goblin Fortress at the top of the hill and faced off against the Goblin King, my first level 5 enemy. His shield is pretty tough to get through, but my bow is also pretty freaking powerful. I just sat back from a safe distance firing away. Easy stuff with this bow. I couldn't find what I needed up here, so I was still searching for that last piece though. I knew I was nearing the end, and once I had that final piece, I'd feel compelled to finish and fight the dragon. So I actually pulled back just a little and spent some time doing the survival thing. I was definitely invested in this world and my base, even though I hadn't done any building yet. But it made me want to slow down and just enjoy this world a little more before it was time to put it down. Eventually, while out in the highlands, I accidentally found the dragon tooth while trying to dodge a lightning bolt, but I didn't have the right tool. I needed a better pickaxe. So first, more iron, then the iron pickaxe, then right back to my lodestone next to the dragon skull, and I got myself the final piece, the dragon tooth. I went back and I crafted my challenge horn. I wanted to get a few final things done before I went to fight the dragon. My stag bow was really nice, but I at least wanted to try some of the other things. I crafted the Blightwood staff, then I went off to do the Dog Days side quest from Vanica. I had already taken down the king and I collected the tokens. I just needed to go to the shrine in the Stormlands and activate the ritual, but it needed parts too that I didn't have. So it was a bit timely running there, then back again. I did it though, mostly because I was curious about getting more upgrades, unlocking more weapons. I knew there were more masterclass weapons. I only had the Abyssal Whip so far, so I was hoping to get something unlocked. But after I performed the ritual and went back to Vanica, all I got was this lousy cape. I mean, it's cool, but not really that valuable for me. Not like I was hoping for. I'm pretty sure the other weapons come from side quests, but I didn't know which ones, so instead of trying to just do them all, I first decided to craft the only one I have available, the Abyssal Whip. Then, to test it out. And this thing was even more powerful than my iron sword. But the thing I liked most was the speed. It's super fast and hits multiple times each strike. The fact that you can use this thing with a shield, and the fact that you can use your fire or air spell on it, and the fact that it has this abyssal snare special ability. I think I have a new favorite weapon. I even tested it out on the Garou King. It's a beast. There was still some things to unlock, like the other masterclass weapons, and other things to discover, like these grindstones, but I was right there at the end and pretty much set on getting ready to take on Velgar. So I started prepping for that. I didn't know what to expect, but seeing as how it's the final boss available right now, I expected it to be my biggest challenge yet. I had my armor and weapons set, so it was just a matter of getting together the potions and such to make sure I go in fully prepared. I had a few resources together. I wanted to make sure to bring plenty of health potions, which I already had, plenty of ward stones for that extra shield protection, and anti-poison potions because I already knew the dragon's breath is poisonous thanks to his frequent visits at my base. Once I was ready, which didn't take much time, I made my way to Velgar's tower. I brought the Ferocious Infusion, which gave stamina reduction for attacks, just as another way to boost my chances of victory. But interestingly, you can't drink it unless you are thirsty. I entered the tower and placed the challenge horn. Velgar accepted my challenge, and the fight began. As soon as my first arrow hit him, I knew how easy this fight was gonna be. This stag bow took a huge chunk of his health off. His first attacks were pretty easy to dodge also. I just kept firing away, shot after shot. Probably would not have been able to do this without anti-poison potion though, because the poison would probably melt me. Otherwise, his attacks were pretty slow and easy to dodge. It was a very straightforward fight, and even the first time through, you don't have to necessarily learn the timing because the attacks are so slow. Not much of a challenge at all. When I did get hit, it wasn't too brutal either. I could have taken a decent number of hits without dying, and in under 2 minutes, the fight was already over. I was victorious. A little underwhelming though. I was fully expecting that to be my biggest challenge yet. It was not. Fighting that level 5 Goblin King was probably the toughest thing I had to face off against because, well, he had a shield. I took my trophy, the head of Velgar, back to the old wise man for some final rewards. He let me know Velgar was just a foot soldier, and the Queen Coldra, a much stronger dragon, is out there somewhere, and she won't sit quietly for long. I thought, good, because I can't wait. As underwhelming as that dragon fight was, I was and am still very much looking forward to it. Let's talk about that. At the beginning, I posed the question, is it fun? The short answer is yes. I had an absolutely delightful time playing this game. Despite its early access state, despite the minor complaints I had here and there, this was a very fun experience. Let me quickly recap some of the things I disliked so that I can end this video on a high note. Starting with my biggest complaint, which I mentioned multiple times, I think it could use some adjustments in progression. One of the best things about true open world games is that you can go where you want, when you want, If you want to go to an area underpowered, you should have the option to do that. And if you want to go to a new area after you're already super strong and can just wipe all the enemies with ease, you should have the freedom to do that. Even if you are required to do something challenging to progress, it felt like this bottleneck was unintentional. The fact I had to go into those really difficult areas just to get to the next tier of resources felt a little unbalanced. You can dangle that carrot in front of me, but don't dangle it too far. And that's kind of what it felt like. Besides that, it's really just the storage that was my only other large issue. But that is something they could easily fix or add in the future. So overall, my experience was amazing and hampered by very little. This is a survival crafting game, and I loved the survival and crafting elements, besides the storage, of course. The survival element gave me what I desire, an important system that is relevant to the rest of your game. Food and hunger isn't there just to annoy you, even if it does. It's a mechanic. If you are underfed, you have a lesser ability to heal. If you are dehydrated, you have a lesser ability to regain stamina. And if you're tired, you have less stamina overall. All these things make the survival element important and not just thrown in there to call it a survival game. On top of that, there's a plethora of foods and craftable items to boost those things. Then, when you get into the grinding and farming nature of survival crafters, you start talking about the magic. How amazing and unique is that? Like I said, it's so cool it ruined all other tree choppers for me because it's so fun, satisfying, and refreshingly different. Then, with all the resources and variety of things to craft, it feels like an incredibly deep crafted game, even though it's still very early. I can see amazing potential for insane amounts of things to gather and things to craft in the future. And perhaps the biggest standout to me was the combat. This was not the best combat in a game that I've ever experienced, but it's one of the best in a survival crafting game. Typically, these games put so much effort into making their survival crafting components work that combat usually feels like an afterthought. This has the complexity in combat that makes it fun. The combos with the weapons, the variety of weapons, and the playstyles available. The specialty weapons, the weapons having special abilities, the magic changing the weapon usage even more. The dodging, the parrying, all this stuff is stuff you'd find in an action game. Rarely do you see it, this deep at least, in a survival crafter. They clearly made it a point to make the combat feel good, and that's what makes it fun to me. My final point, yes, this is absolutely worth the $30 for early access, even if you're watching this video after they've probably already added stuff. If they didn't add any more content, would it still be worth it? For me, yeah, because $30 got me almost 20 hours of playtime, and in these days, that's all I really need from a game. Ain't nobody got time to put 100 hours into every single game. Fortunately though, there is more content coming, which is exactly what you hope for when considering investing in an early access game. Before even starting the game, they showed a roadmap, which already helped build trust and showed me that they cared and are passionate. And once I played the game, not even the whole thing, but after the first couple hours, I knew they put love into this game. The way it felt, played, and all the things I was experiencing is only doable by a team of developers who actually care. And this was that team. So I'm absolutely looking forward to that next bit of content, and I will be continuing my journey when it's here. Hopefully, I see you on that adventure as well. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate you, and I hope you have a wonderful day.